excited that you've seen to the same direction in which the vision of Ebabosa was crafted. And I think the Muganda practice in Rwanda is the logic in which Ebabosa builds on. It builds on tapping into talents of everybody, their skills, but with a common intent of giving what they can, but in the course of that, the benefit, they gain experience, they get exposed into areas that they can be able to develop their career, their interests, and other things. But if you look at, you mentioned something which was very, very important here, and the aspect is, if you look at the Ministry of Environment, and you take the Paris Agreement domestication, it is not necessarily the Ministry of Environment that will implement the bulk of that.
Exactly.
The role of the Ministry of Environment is to coordinate and also play this role of being auditors.
Exactly.
Auditors in the sense that, yes, agriculture is the engine of development, but how it is done matters.
Exactly.
Without a healthy environment, you will not have healthy food systems, and therefore the country will be food insecure.
Exactly.
If you take transport that is emitting, polluting the environment and causing indoor-outdoor pollution, it's going to cause health issue. And a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. So environment comes in there to ensure that clean sources of energy can be utilized, or clean approaches can be utilized. And here, as you said, the logic of Ebabosa was to leverage on what we have as a continent in abundance, which is us, the human capital.
The human capital.
Yes. And for quite a very long time, the focus has been most of the time on physical resources, whether it is minerals or oils, and sometimes we forget the most important capital that we have, which is us. And so Ebabosa was to tap into this, but with a common vision, as you rightly said, there needs to be a focus. How do you address issues of poverty, unemployment through the environmental lens, but taking that from that lens to other sectors where environment is a solution? And when you look at the work of the development, you see that agriculture as a sector in terms of employment, in terms of also even causing climate change, and in terms of how it can lift people from the bottom of the pyramid, you can only drive that through the lens of environment and agricultural sector. But for agriculture to be effective, you need to add value, but value must be done through clean energy. That's where energy comes in. You need to be able to connect to markets. That brings in transport, but it should be resilient transport that is not emitting. And then you also need to connect to ensure that what is produced is fit for markets within Africa and even outside Africa. And that's where the Ministry of Trade comes in. And then you need affordable financing. How can you be able to ensure that what is produced in a way that works with environment, not against environment, is processed using clean energy, not diesel processes. And as a result of that, then there is a common standard. So Ebabosa have 5 pillars. And the first pillar is how you produce and process. We call it clean energy, EVA-driven agriculture, clean energy amalgamation. The second is how do you produce, how do you process, how do you transport, how do you connect to markets? With that adding to emissions, and at the same time working with environment and not against environment. That's called Ebabosa compliance standards, which goes exactly to what you said here. And the third is now the policy harmonization. Because at the policy level, without synchronizing policies, we will operate in silos and the problems will still continue. Agriculture will use inorganic, chemicalized fertilizers to drive agricultural production, which is destroying the environment. So the trade-offs become so clearly seen. You will have energy operating in silos and focusing on domestic energy utilization and access to energy, without actually synchronizing with agricultural policy to add value to what they are producing. And therefore, even what is produced, you will still have post-harvest losses. And then you will have transport, access to connection from production sites to markets. Maybe the routes are constructed, and even the kind of vehicles that are used, they're still using diesel power engines. So this now is the policy harmonization, which I think is the easiest entry point of Ebabosa in Rwanda, because then it fits in very directly in supporting the Ministry of Environment to operationalize the national determined contributions and facilitate with our technical backstopping to synchronize policies across different sectors and work together to ensure that NDCs are implemented, but in a way that is harmonized and also creating complementarities and synergies across the board. This we are doing across 16 countries in the continent, and we can bring those lessons on board. But the beauty of Ebabosa is that when it was created in 2015 in collaboration with the AU. The idea was that it was supposed to be a framework that is country driven. And what does that mean? It meant that when we reach out to the country, the first entry point was the Ministry of Environment. As a UN Environment agency, our entry point to countries is environment. But environment is a solution to other sectors. And if a Bafosa is to be optimal and to ensure that agriculture moves away from the traditional approaches and utilize environment as a solution to drive transformation in the agricultural sector, then the Ministry of Agriculture needs to come, the environment needs to work with the Ministry of Agriculture, because even when you look at your national determined contributions, agriculture, sustainable agricultural approaches, and energy comes in as really the key sectors that will implement the bulk of that. So working with the Ministry of Agriculture becomes quite very crucial. But the Interagency Policy Task Force provides that avenue to bring each and every sector to harmonize policy, which can then help inform operations. And the other part, which is very important, is that a proposal leverages on what is already existing. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. But where there are gaps, we can provide technical backstopping and support. But the intent is not to reinvent the wheel and duplicate efforts. That is why it is a framework. If it's sitting with the Ministry of Environment, it's not going to be a duplication or creating of. No, you are already implementing and facilitating the implementation of the NDCs. The advantage of a BAFOSA is that it brings on board state and non-state actors, which means civil society, NGOs, private sector, individual citizens in their own, like what Jackson has been doing with the colleagues. It is a framework where they can even bring their strengths, and what they are already doing on the ground will help add to the NDC's implementation. And lastly, which is I think is quite a very important aspect, is when you look at Rwanda, like any other African country, but you guys are the cleanliness country, I think in the entire world even, there is no absence of ideas, there is no absence of initiatives. What has been absent for quite a very long time is connecting the dots. And that is what the BAFOSA comes into field. How many can we map out the clean energy actors in Rwanda and link them up to those who are producing using nature-based approaches? And can we be able to connect them to markets, ensuring that what they produce, they actually are following the different standards? And these standards are created as a result of working with the Rwandan Board of Standards, whereby you produce using nature-based approaches, ecosystem-based approaches, you process using clean energy, and you add value using clean energy, and you can connect to market using information communication. So the level of emissions are lower, environment has not been destroyed, and emissions have not been added into the atmosphere. How it is produced, it is good for health, and at the same time, it is also done in a way that ecosystems are not destroyed. Then working with the Rwanda Board of Standards, these can then be standardized, that these have gone through the environmental principles and standards, and at the same time is in line with ensuring that the emissions are not done and it fits into the implementation of the NDCs. That way you will fetch a market across the continent, because other countries are working with their national bureaus of standards to do so. And this fits very much into your point here of environment being auditors, but working with other sectors to ensure that it is implemented. I'm really excited with this. And lastly, the letter you said, yes, I can run it through you first before then officially get it to the ministry.
Yes, I'm available.
Yes.
I'm available.